With the fantasy team previews. We're going through all 32 teams, talking about every fantasy relevant player here on the Justin Henry Show channel. Make sure y'all drop a like on this video and sub. We're going to be going over the Baltimore Ravens today. And the Baltimore Ravens last year ended up being a semi-decent fantasy-friendly team. Obviously, you had Lamar Jackson, who played well last year. But there's some new pieces on this team this year and some pieces that emerged last season. But this thing really starts with the quarterback position and Lamar Jackson, who finished as the QB4 last season. Coming off of a down year the year before that, there was a lot of concerns with like the injuries with him dealing in the past. And then also, the contract situation heading into last year. And what we saw, obviously Todd Monken came into the fold, changed up the offense just slightly, but there was good expectations for Lamar heading into the season, showing that he could stay healthy, right? That was the one caveat. It was, could Lamar Jackson stay healthy? And he proved that last year, throwing for 3,678 yards, threw for 24 touchdowns, also added another 821 yards and 5 touchdowns on the ground. So it's not a question with Lamar Jackson of if he can do it or what he's going to be able to provide fantasy-wise as the QB4 last year. Obviously, he's an elite asset to own on a week-to-week basis. There were times when we saw a little bit of like, we see big games with Lamar and we see a little bit more of like, hey, this team's cool with running the football. Through last year, it was J.K. Dobbins. Early on, he got hurt. Gus Edwards, and then Keaton Mitchell as the season went on, Justice Hill. So his team is okay with going through the ground game. Obviously, Lamar is a big part of the ground game, but that does minimize some of his big games. When they get in the red zone, you got Gus Edwards going for 3 TDs some games. That does minimize some of his weekly consistent output. So while we'll get the occasional 30-point game from Lamar Jackson, we also get a dud. And I think we have to understand that coming into this season as well, that's what he provides. He's not going to give you 250 and 2 touchdowns every single week in a nice baseline of 20 fantasy points every week. That's just not the type of quarterback like Lamar Jackson is. But when you look through the course of the year, he's going to have those win you a week type performances. And I think that's what we love about Lamar Jackson. So obviously heading into this year, a lot of this, there's some same players, like obviously Zay Flowers is going to be coming back. RASHOD Bateman is going to be coming back. We're expected return of Mark Andrews to full health. So a lot of good things, weapons-wise, coming in for Lamar Jackson. And obviously, we're going to talk about the running back situation here, which is vastly improved from last season for this Ravens team. So I think Lamar Jackson is going to be in the same conversation that he was last year. I think just a little bit more confidence, right? We were taking Lamar Jackson to be that elite QB1 potential ceiling, and I think we still see that. Could he throw for 4,000 yards and rush for 1,000? It would not surprise me. And he came into camp a little bit leaner this year. He came into voluntary workouts, a little bit leaner this year. So he might have shed some weight during this offseason, which could have been the source for like he was trying to stay durable, but maybe took away a little bit of his some of his elusiveness. I think we get back to seeing Lamar play a little bit more free now that he knows his body can hang through the entire course of the season. So I still have Lamar Jackson as a top 3 quarterback. And, if you want to put him with Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, any of those top 4 to me feel like they're interchangeable. So if you got Lamar Jackson as your QB1, I'm cool with it. If you got him as your QB4, I'm cool with it. He'll fill out any range of those any range of those numbers. So for me, I like Lamar Jackson, elite quarterback option. I don't really think much changes with his value this year, even with the addition of one Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry signed it wasn't a surprise, but it was like, man, this was a really good signing. And I think it was an underrated move. Somehow, some way, this was still an underrated move for this Ravens team who did lose, Gus Edwards in the offseason. J.K. Dobbins obviously was injured last year. So to get a really good piece at running back. And Derrick Henry, for whatever reason, just because he's older, I would say, a lot of people think that he's washed up or declining or falling off. And those are the it's like the type of mentality people have about Derrick Henry. Is he a 2,000-yard rusher anymore? I doubt that. He's not going to get 2,000 yards rushing, right? That's just not who he is. He's going to go for 20 touchdowns. I don't think he has that in his repertoire anymore. But is he still an effective rusher? Absolutely. For whatever reason, even the fantasy community is down on Derrick Henry in drafts. Last year, you didn't see him going in the first round, or sometimes he was going towards the back end of the top 10. And it was like he finished as the RB8 last year. 1,167 yards rushing last year, 12 touchdowns. And that was dealing with an injury at the beginning of the season where he was seeing limited carries. Remember we saw Tajay Spears coming in there for the Titans and having some games, and Derrick Henry, were like, what's going on with his usage? He was dealing with an injury, and he still finished as the RB8. So he proved to be durable last year, made it through the whole year. I have no problems with Derrick Henry going higher than he probably should. Like, this year, we're going to get all of the other backs going to heaven, right? The Kyrens, the Saquon, everybody's going to go ahead of Derrick Henry, but he's in that next tier. Like, and this is the perfect situation. The perfect situation. We talk about what Lamar Jackson is able to do on the ground. That is going to open things up for Derrick Henry this season. So as a Raven, there's a ton of potential. The potential is sky high for one Derrick Henry, the king. Now that he's in a new situation, I think he has something to prove for this Ravens team. So this year, he's going to be a top 7 running back, no doubt in my mind. Top 7 running back. They will feed him in the red zone. They will use him in short yardage situations to keep Lamar Jackson healthy. And this is a guy that can still handle a really good workload. So for me, I'm taking Derrick Henry. He's still the king, and I think he'll be a value in drafts. It remains to be seen what his ADP shakes out to be. He's probably going to be going somewhere in the top 10, so I don't think it's going to be a crazy discount. But if, there's some other backs that will be coming up, and people are going to say, I like the upside of this player. Or a lot of times younger backs get an additional push. I think we're going to find some value with Derrick Henry as an older veteran who everybody's expecting to just fall off at some point. I like what Derrick Henry's value should be this year. If it gets higher than like RB7, then maybe I'm staying away. But for now, he looks like he could be a really good RB1 value in drafts. Next up, we got to talk about Keaton Mitchell. And Keaton Mitchell obviously should be coming back from injury at some point this year. He finishes the RB59 last year, and this is coming in midseason. He was dealing with some injuries in the beginning of the year, and he missed 9 games total last season at the beginning and at the end. So, but while he came in, he was electric, to say the least, and people were really hyped on Keaton Mitchell's value. I wasn't in that group, obviously. I saw the explosiveness, but he reminded me of a change of pace back. And unfortunately for him, whenever he comes back this year, if it's the beginning of the season or maybe he comes in partially during the season, I still think that's going to be his role. It will be a change of pace back. So for me, this is not a player I'd be looking at drafting in Dynasty. If you could sell the name Keaton Mitchell, I don't know if you still can because Derrick Henry's there now. But for now, I think this is a player I would stay away completely from. Maybe you pick him up off of waivers if things go right in the first couple of weeks of the year. But if you have to draft him, I'm sure his ADP is probably going to be a draftable ADP. This is a player I probably would stay away from just due to the nature of the injury. So for me, I'm out on Keaton Mitchell. He's already kind of small. I know he's electric, and the Ravens love him. The team absolutely loves him. I'm staying away from Keaton Mitchell as of right now. All right. Other players, receivers, right? Let's go to the receivers. And Zay Flowers obviously proved last year that he was worth the pick. Finished as the wide receiver 31. So he had some really nice moments in the first half of the season, even in the second half. But it was kind of an up and down season for Zay Flowers, who at points looked like he could be a wide receiver 2 candidate on a weekly basis. And I think that's just the nature of this Ravens passing attack. It's going to be up and down, as I talked about with Lamar Jackson. So he had 77 catches last year, 858 yards receiving, and 5 touchdowns, which is a solid season. But what are we looking for out of our wide receivers? We're looking for volume when it comes to receptions or maybe potential touchdowns, right? And I don't really see Zay Flowers having too much more of that in his repertoire. Will he have more receiving yards? I think he can crack 1,000 receiving yards this season. I think Zay Flowers has a strong season. Will he be a top 25 guy? I don't think so. And so it all remains to see like how the ADP shakes up. For now, he's being drafted about in the right spot, right? That's in the wide receiver 25 to 35 range. I can see Zay Flowers being that, but he doesn't potentially have a lot of upside. And that's my concern with a guy like Zay Flowers. I think on a week-to-week basis, he will take advantage of certain matchups. We've seen him go for, 102 touchdowns. We've seen that. But can we get consistent production out of him on a weekly basis is the major concern that I have for Zay Flowers. So I think he's a good receiver, not a great receiver, and somebody that fits the offense very well. He will have a more explosive role this year, but I mean, at times last year, this Ravens team was dealing with a lot of injuries, and he still didn't really produce consistent, like top 25 numbers. So that's my concern. Even as a rookie, Even as a rookie, he produced well, but I still have that concern heading into the season. For dynasty purposes, I think he fills in as a wide receiver 3 for at least the next 5 to 7 years. I truly believe he can be at least a really good piece on fantasy teams. Do I ever think he cracks a wide receiver 2 range consistently? I don't see that. I don't see that as of right now. So unless he proves something this year where he's more involved in the red zone or seeing more consistent passing game work, I'm going to keep him in that wide receiver 3 range. And it kind of seems like that's his role for this season. So my gut is that Zay Flowers is probably going to be drafted right where he should be. Doesn't provide a whole lot of upside. Doesn't really have a lot of floor either. I think he's a safe player. Just on a week-to-week basis, we're probably going to get some inconsistency, which is okay when it comes to fantasy. I just don't see a whole lot of, like, if you're going to have inconsistency with your receivers, you want those inconsistent weeks to be like 40-point bombs where they win your week. Like, that's what you're looking for. And I think Zay Flowers maybe has one of those in a year, maybe 2. So that's my thoughts on Zay Flowers. I think he's a good receiver, but he'll be more name power this year than he will be like production for your team. Rashod Bateman is another receiver. Obviously, the team lost Odell in the offseason, who didn't really perform that well anyway. But Rashod Bateman finishes the wide receiver 85. The team has talked about getting him more involved. This is a player who's been dealing with injuries, and he was a first-round pick himself. Only had 367 yards last year, which is for a player that was drafted in the first round, it's terrible in your third, fourth year, whatever Rashod Bateman's in. So he only had 1 touchdown. Like, this is a player who we needed to get more out of. This team needs to get more out of him. They got to see what they have with him. So I think Rashod Bateman will actually be a value this year. I said the same thing last year, and he didn't produce. So I'm going to continue. I still believe that this team can get Rashod Bateman the ball and kind of scheme him in a little bit better than they have. That has to be the case. And so the good thing about Rashod Bateman is you may not even have to draft him. He may be going outside the top 50 wide receivers, depending on your league size. This could be a player that you get with one of your last picks or somebody that you pick up off of waivers once you hear a little bit more news come out or you see him play in the game. So until we get confirmation that this team's actually going to give him 6 to 7 targets in a game consistently, I think you can wait on Rashod Bateman. He's a player I do have hope for, though, and I will continue to have hope for probably the rest of his tenure with the Ravens. He's a talented player, and we've seen it in his first season, his rookie year even. He showed flashes. We've seen the flashes. We ain't seen that consistent 1,000-yard season out of Rashod Bateman. I don't know if he gets to 1,000, but I think he'll be a value in drafts this year. And obviously, we got to talk about Tez Walker, DEVONTEZ Walker, 4th round pick, 6'2", good speed, 4.3 speed, 4.3. I think he ran 4.35, 4.36 in the combine. So we know he's got the speed to be a Blazer, a later round pick. Curious to see how the Ravens use him. I'm not really interested in him in redraft. In Dynasty, this would be the Rashod Bateman replacement if Rashod Bateman doesn't click this year. I think they drafted a contingency plan if Rashod Bateman does not click. So DEVONTEZ Walker, Tez Walker is what he's called. I would be very in on him in Dynasty, especially later rounds if you're looking like 3rd, 4th round in Dynasty. As far as redraft, I don't think this is the year. Could have some flashes. Probably will show potential this year at some point. The biggest position we got to talk about, Mark Andrews. Obviously suffered an injury in week 11. And, he was playing that consistent role. There was a lot of concerns about, like, Todd Monken's offense. Do they use him? Is he going to finish tight end 1? Like, where does he finish? Is he the best tight end in the game? Is he going to, be relegated back? Is Lamar going to spread the ball out? And we saw Mark Andrews look like the Mark Andrews he's always been, right? In the games he played, he had 45 catches, 544 yards, 6 TDs. So obviously played well in the games that he, when he was in there, he was a top 5 tight end. I don't think there was any doubt about that. It's now with these receivers, obviously this team is leaning into the receivers, into the run game with Derrick Henry. Where does Mark Andrews fit in, and is he healthy? We're still going to get top 5 production out of him. Can he get to tight end 1? That's the question that everybody wants to know, and that's the thing I doubt. He wasn't on pace to get like 100 catches and 1,000 yards. This was a little bit slower pace. The touchdowns were carrying him last year, but this wasn't tight end 1 pace. So right now there's a few candidates that can potentially be tight end 1. I think you can get a value on Mark Andrews. The only thing is his name value does talk. So You know, when you go Mark Andrews or Trey McBride, most people in your casual leagues are going to take Mark Andrews, and your more, you know, your sharper leagues, you're going to get a lot more Trey McBride. So he fits to me like right above George Kittle, who had a strong year last year as well. He's right there with George Kittle. I don't mind which one you take. Travis Kelce, they're all kind of in that same tier to me. So I like Mark Andrews. We'll see where he comes out. I wouldn't overpay for Mark Andrews in this offense, just knowing what we saw last year. It looks like this is going to be a pick your poison type of offense that wants to score a lot of points. Their goal was to score, 28 a game plus. That was the Ravens' goal. I think Lamar came out and said that in week 13, 14, something like that. He was disappointed they didn't get to 28 points. But this is a team that wants to score points, and Mark Andrews is obviously a big part of that. So, yes, he will be a top 3 to 5 consensus tight end. Does he have potential to be the tight end 1? I don't see the same upside as I do with about 2 or 3 other guys at the tight end position right now. So if you're chasing upside, Mark Andrews is not your guy. If you're chasing, I know he's going to be a top 3 to 5 tight end, Mark Andrews is your guy. That's where I think he fits in. And Isaiah Likely obviously had a strong finish of the year last year in the playoffs once Mark Andrews was hurt. And his value is solely tied into that as well. So with Isaiah Likely, we're not really talking about him unless Mark Andrews gets hurt. But when he does play, he becomes a back-end tight end 1 option. Had a strong finish of the year, but I don't really think he sees a whole lot of value this season. So that does it for the Ravens side of it. I'll be back soon. Like I said, I'm talking all 32 teams, so make sure you subscribe, hit the like button, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.